All right, thank you very much, Jack. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. For those who don't know, my name's Tom Ryan and I'm Executive Officer for the NTCA. But one of the more rewarding parts of my roles is being the facilitator for the Future NTCA program, which is about to enter its 4th year. As part of the contribution each year of the Future NTCA, the participants plan and present a conference session. This year, the Future NTCA have chosen to address the topic of succession. Handing on the family business to the next generation is a time-honoured tradition, but in modern-day agriculture, often presents the single biggest challenge that any family business or small operation faces. 4 of this year's Future NTCA group have decided on a new and improved format for your presentation this year. And they'll actually be presenting to you directly themselves. So we've really thrown them in the deep end this year. So be kind to them, ladies and gentlemen. To assist with addressing their topic, the Future NTCA have invited Mr. David Harland, the Managing Director of FINH, to join them on stage. David is a respected commentator and speaker in the family business sector and will provide insight into how to successfully navigate succession. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to the stage Mr. David Harland.
Hi, I'm Barney. I've died, and here I am in heaven. Peaceful, beautiful place up here. I've had a great life, you know. I just wish that I'd got that Harley a bit earlier in life. It was beautiful, that Harley Davidson. I took that corner a bit too fast, and that was the end of my life. Well, thank God that I went and saw my lawyers only a month ago, and accountants, and we put the will in place. My dear wife, Kate, and I still remember it, you know. It was such a big deal. We'd been and had lunch, a counter lunch at the local pub, and we went up and we met the lawyer, and this was a big moment for us, and we signed off on our will. Then I thought, that's beautiful. We've done everything we need to do for succession planning. Kate and I had a great life. We built the business from basically nothing. We now have got 20 staff and a beautiful family. Kate was good to the children. And the children, Steve, I've worked with Steve now for 3 years. He's a great boy. I hope he'll go well. I was grooming him to take over. Just don't know whether he was quite there, but I think he'll get there. Kate will manage. And the girls, I've got the 2 best girls anyone could ever wish to have. They studied, and I told them, I don't want you working in the business. I want you out and I want you to pursue your career, because there's so much out there on offer. But they are bright girls. Gee, they're bright girls. So, here I am. Not a worry in the world. And I'm sure they'll go well. I'm sure it's all well. We did our will. There's not much more to do, is there? Is there much more to do than do your will? Well, maybe we should just see how they're going. Kate, how is it going?
Well, what a whirlwind, traumatic, not family breaking, but very close 4 months it's been. I'm so glad we spoke to those lawyers and accountants. They've really got it all sorted. I've got Steve, who's more than willing to take over the business. He was with his father every day, knows how to do it. I really, not necessarily wiping my hands of it, but trust him so much. And my girls, well, I'm so glad we sent them away for a good education. They just are always there to support me, and I really think everything's going to be okay.
I told you, all going well so far. So far going well. I always thought that there might have been something, you know, with Steve, who I was grooming, and Georgie. Georgie's she's bright, but she was fiery. eh? I knew she'd take it up to Steve, but I thought that'd only be healthy. Let's see how they're going. Steve and Georgie.
Righto, well, I've got some choppers booked for next week and things are really coming along well. We're going to start mustering.
Look, it sounds like everything's pretty well planned, but you know, have you actually talked to Mum about this?
Oh, I don't really think we need to bring Mum into this, do we? She's got enough to worry about and Dad never used to bring her into it at all.
Well, look, you know, I know you've got the day-to-day operation stuff pretty well sorted, but I think, you know, I think that this is something that we really need to have more of a discussion around. You know, I've been away for a long time, but I think, you know, you can really do with my involvement.
Oh, trust me, I have it under control. I've worked with Dad day in, day out for the last few years. I know what I'm doing. I'll be right.
I think for the sake of the business, fair enough that it continues on, but we really need to look at growing it. And I've got a lot of experience that I think you could use. I'd really like to come back in a hands-on capacity within the business.
Oh, interesting. Sounds like there might be a few little things emerging here. But I've got to tell you, Grayson's the one. She's the girl. She knows what she's about. She's got a great career in the bank. And I know when it comes to finance and being a director on a board and really being a great steward for this business, she's the one that will be in control and she's going to help her mum. Let's see how Grayson's faring.
Well, Mum, I have a concern about Dad's will. The three of us kids didn't really understand what was in it. I've gone out and got my own career, and I'm really happy on my own pathway. But I think I've gained a lot of professional knowledge over the years, and I think I'd be able to offer that to our business and create us a future pathway.
If you just spread out across this way. So let me ask you all, succession planning. Does succession planning occur when there's a crisis? I.e. in this case, Barney's gone. Is it the month before when Barney was so excited and he walked down with Kate down to the local lawyer, great trusted advisor, and they signed up the will? And Barney and Kate, as you can see, think, well, that's succession planning. Is it more when maybe the kids were all leaving school, going to uni, thinking about their career? Should we have sat down with them and actually started communicating about what the plans are for the future? How will the children be involved with the business? What's in our wills? How do you make financial decisions? Or maybe we can even go back a little bit further and we could say, you know, when they were at school, they're making decisions to get an OP score, they're making decisions to go to university, they're starting to develop relationships with others, and they're really starting to grow up. Should we be involving them in decision making and talking about our future then? But maybe we even go back further and maybe we should be talking to our family when they are age appropriate, whatever that may be. Could that be when they're 15 years old and at the very beginning of their high school? So I'll let you decide which period of time is the best time to start succession planning. Okay, the shed.
So, family, I really think that we should all get together and have a business meeting down in the machinery shed where Barney used to make all of his important decisions. So now that we're all here, how's everything going? I haven't heard anything. Is everything going great?
Oh, well, I'm trying to plan this muster, but everything I do, Georgie reckons is wrong. Apparently, I don't know what I'm doing planning, although I used to work with Dad every day and know exactly how he does it.
Look, you know, day-to-day management is one thing, but being in the operations and actually managing the business is a whole separate thing. We couldn't even organise a microphone. Come on. You know, I really think you could benefit from some external. You know, we've got ideas, and you've worked in one business. You know, I really think you could use our help.
Well, I guess if you're thinking like that, Dad did talk about buying a new property. Maybe we could look into that to bring you into it as well.
Well, you know, I think that's perfect, but at the moment, as long as you're not going to try and run it, because, you know, at the moment you're not giving me any say at all.
Okay, guys, I think we need to just calm everything down a little here. Grayson, have you got any views on this that I need to know about now?
I sure do. You guys making a big business decision like that changes everything. Have we considered all our investment options? Have you thought about the debt, where the money's going to come from, how we're going to pay that money back? You guys can't even decide who's going to run the show.
Okay, all right, I think we just need to interject a little here. There's no need to get so heated at each other. Like, is there anything else either of you needs to tell me? I thought everything was great.
Look, I don't know. I just think Steve thinks he runs the show. Fair enough, he's worked in the business, but he needs to accept that what gives him the right, just because he's worked in the business, why should he take total ownership?
But we had it all planned, Barney and I. We went to the lawyers, we discussed all this. I just thought this is what you guys would want to do.
And it's something that we've never discussed ourselves. Why have we never had this discussion before now?
I think we need to enlist some expert help. We're not going anywhere here.
Hi, Kate. David Harland, and I might be able to help your family.
Oh.
So I think this is a classic case of succession planning 101, where here we are as a business trying to make some business decisions after a crisis has occurred. Kate, what I suggest is that you are, like all businesses, when an event occurs or when succession planning is first raised, is we talk about succession through the prism of the business. When in fact, succession planning is all about the family. I often say that does the tail wag the dog or does the dog wag the tail? So Kate, I'd like all your family to remove yourselves from the shed where the business decisions used to be made, and I want you to all come together as a family, please. Because what's important in this, in any succession planning environment, is necessarily the harmony of the family. The relationships that exist in the family are the things that are left to the last moment. We all want to focus on who's going to do the next muster, whether we want to buy the next cattle property, or whatever an operational issue may be. We all know that's the tail wagging the dog. I'm not being dismissive of how important business decisions are, but all you mums out there will be aware because you're instrumental in managing the family and keeping the family together. Hands up those who would agree. All the mums were first. All the mums were first. I want to make a few points about this before we start having a family meeting and not a business meeting. The first point is, historically speaking, when it comes to family businesses, we want to spend all of our time, because of the tensions that arise in family business, we say business is business, family is family, and we're going to keep them apart. And we work hard to keep them apart. But do you know, in fact, globally, and all of the research says, the issue is how you bring them together. How do you make these two systems, the family system and the business system, actually work together like a well-oiled machine? Well, there's only one way. You need to have a structure and you need to have a process of communication. And then you communicate, and then you communicate, and then you communicate. And you'll find that when you do that, the business and the decision-making will flow and will be integrated in a much more sensible way where you preserve what really is the value in a family business is the family. Is the family is the value in the family business. I'm just going to try and help these young guys and you try and deal with this on a very small slither of what you can do as a family and a family in business to help you with your succession planning. This is this wide, but we're going to try and give you some insight just with this slither. There's three things that when we talk about succession, if we go back to the will, Everyone thinks succession's about legal transfer of ownership. We go and sign a will, and these assets go from here to here. Well, I think I'm trying to demonstrate, and hopefully at the end of this you'll realise that's not succession planning. That's dealing with the legal requirements of legal ownership transfer. Succession planning, there are three main things, and I want you to write these down if you can, but remember these three things. You must deal with leadership. Leadership in the family and leadership in the business. That doesn't happen overnight. That takes years and years to develop the leaderships. 2 is the stewardship of the business. We're all so caught up on the legal ownership transfer, we forget the fact the next generation are really the stewards of this business and this family wealth. They are the entrusted people to take hold of these assets, these financial assets, and try and preserve them and try and grow them ready for the next generation. It's almost like passing the baton. So succession is not about the legal ownership transfer, it's about how you hand that baton, how that baton will be carried, and how it will be passed on again without dropping it. That's succession planning. The third thing in succession planning, and I'm hearing it all, I just looked at that prior presentation, and it's a really important component of succession planning. The third one that you need to write down is we need to think from thinking locally to be thinking globally about our business. We now operate in a global marketplace, very different to last generation and the generation before. And I don't mean it didn't exist in those generations, I mean it's much more intense now that we're part of a global community and our businesses must be positioned in that global community. So these young guys here have to be part of those three transitions. A crisis has happened in their family, there's been no conversation, and all of a sudden they've been thrust into this decision making. You can see when they went to the shed that there's no understanding of the leadership, local to global, and the stewardship of this business. Although I reckon Grayson might have some ideas around that stewardship. Could everyone put their hands up if you are a family business, and hold your hands up. Put your hands down if you're 4 generations or greater. Put your hands down if you're 3 generations, 2 generations, 1 generation. Okay, I think that tells me that there's not a lot of family businesses around that have been around for many, many generations. I'll make one last final point before we move on. Northern Territory has a great association with South Australia, and you'll all probably know the family, the Coopers family, who started a brewery 8 generations ago. Do you know they're a public company? They're a family-owned and controlled company, and they argue that the strength of their company over those 8 generations is because they got the family effect right. They knew that the value of their business and their brand name was the fact that they were owned and controlled by a family group, and they put in place the structures so that they had great communication, great legal protection across their family. Coopers will argue that they won the attack of Lion Nathan in their takeover for one reason only, and that one reason is because of the family effect and what it had on the strength of their shareholder group and their ability to defend that takeover. I think the Lion Nathan bid was double the value that Coopers even valued it at. It's now triple or more, but it's still in family control. Hopefully I've made the point that the family is the most important part of a family in business. And whether the business is an agribusiness or whether the business is whatever it may be, it's the family decision making that's important and how you keep that family unit together. So, Steve, we're here as a family now, we're talking and we've all got together. And Steve, you're going to take over this business. It sounds like you might have a little bit of trouble with that. Tell us about how you plan to take it over and how it's going to work. Kate, and you can sort of tell us what you think after Steve's spoken.
Well,
Well, let me give you some insight, because Before, when you were in the shed, you were telling me you're going to muster, you're going to do these things, you're going to buy another farm, and you're going to, but how do you know what to do, and how are you going to go about that? I know Dad used to talk to you a lot, but how did he actually make the decisions? Because you used to just implement his decisions. Are you comfortable with what your plans are?
Honestly, no. I've never had this opportunity to make such decisions before.
Do you have I can remember Kate telling me, Steve, that your dad used to keep a little notebook. And he'd always, when you'd sit in that shed and make some plans about your year ahead, he'd always have things written down and he'd always keep his notes. Did you go and get that notebook after he passed away and have a look at it?
No, I never did.
No. Tell us about then, Steve, tell us about this buying the neighbour's property. Tell me what makes you think that that's a good decision and how does that form part of your plans?
Well, it would fit Georgie into the equation with her family, as the current property would be far too small for both of us to operate on. And yeah, Dad had always said it was a good opportunity.
Okay. Everyone see how this could play out in a family situation? Mum, what do you think? You happy to let Steve carry on with the operations without any idea of what his planning process might be?
If I said I wasn't a little nervous, I'd be lying. I really think we should have gone back to the table, and it's not just about lawyers and signing the dotted line and crossing your T's and dotting your I's. And it's much more than that, and as you say, Steve has a lot of plans, has a lot of dreams, aspirations, and I don't think without proper guidance, and not necessarily employing a professional, but I think we do need to get an outside opinion on this and actually bring the whole family back together and not necessarily start from scratch, but build a family plan as to where we're going to move forward to. Because at the moment, we've got all these ideas, but we haven't got a strategy, a plan, or not even a base structure to work with to implement these 3 other people into the family business unit.
So what I'm hearing, Kate, is the family has got a decision to make. Do they let Steve run the business and you find out what happens from Steve's decision making after it's happened? Or you've got the decision as a family to say, hey, Steve, what's your plans? Can you write them down? And can we approve them as a family before you start running off, and particularly wanting to buy another farm? Georgie, I thought you'd be more outspoken than this about wanting to be involved in the business.
I'm very outspoken about this issue, actually.
Tell us what your thoughts and feelings are about it.
My thoughts are that, yes, Steve has been in the business. He's been managing along with Dad in the business. Dad's always encouraged us to have an external part. We were never involved in the decision making. Which going forward I think is it's something I've always been interested in, being in the business, but I've always been too scared to ask Dad. I think now is the perfect opportunity that we can sit down as a family and actually have a discussion, to be able to facilitate the involvement of anyone that wants to be involved, whether it's in the operation, which I would like to be, or in a stewardship, like a directorship for Grayson. So I really think that sitting down and having a plan, and then no one gets upset about it either, then everyone's on an even playing field.
Very good. Kate, Mum, can I recommend to you that as a family that you might task Stephen and Georgie to write a business plan for the next 12 months before they start making any decisions about what they're going to do. And that they go away and do that and come back to the family, and that maybe the whole family has to agree to that plan before Steve's entrusted to go and carry that out. Do you think that might work in your family?
I feel like it would work, but then where does Grayson sit in the equation? I don't want to have this great family divide where I feel like I say, okay, go away, make a plan, come back to me. I have this other child that might feel like she's being outcast or only being consulted once the decision's actually being made. I think we all need to be involved in the decision-making process as a family. We all have different roles and we all have things we can bring to the table.
Yes, okay. That's a very good point, Kate, because I heard in the whole process of Steve talking about what he's going to do, and one little thing just dropped. Dad said he was going to buy the neighbour's property. I think what you told me earlier, Steve, that property is nearly twice as more valuable as the property you currently own. So obviously he's got a bit of a war chest. Kate and Barney had a bit of a war chest, but you just see that as part of the normal operations, that you'll carry that out and reinvest the family money back in to the business and grow the business. And Georgie, I think you liked that idea to a certain extent, didn't you? Because that meant you could come and work in the business because it'll be bigger and it'll start employing everybody. So I do take your point, Kate. Maybe if you wrote a plan, we need to have an operational plan with some cash flows attached, understand the working capital, understand what the plans are, and make sure your team understands those plans. But I think Grayson's got a clanger. Grayson.
Grayson's all for planning. Grayson's concern is we're reinvesting family money. Are we sure we want to reinvest into this particular industry? Have we considered all our investment options and decisions? Have we considered Dad's policy where he never went over 30% lending? Have we got the capital to support our additional lending?
I thought you told me, Grayson, that Dad had this thing going where he said, I will never borrow more than 30% of the value of the property. Did he really say that? And is that how you operated?
He really did.
Do you think it, like it is with the operations of the business, do you think it might be good for your family to actually have a policy that actually starts talking about how you're going to invest the family capital?
Yes, we all need to be on the same level playing field.
Yeah. And if you're making, tell me about this policy. If you all, how would you approach it? Would it just be a bunch of you all coming up with different ideas? Like Steve obviously would like to buy another property. So would Georgie, because that gives her a job. But are these good reasons why you would invest in another property? What are some of the parameters you might start putting around your investment policy?
These are some of our emotional decisions as opposed to perhaps our logic of deciding if we can actually support the emotional decisions we're making.
Very good. What do you think, Mum? Are we starting to communicate and start to talk about the real issues here?
We definitely are, and I do feel we should have had this conversation a long time ago. I think the more we talk, and I think we all just need to put our ideas down and come back together as a family and discuss them.
Yeah. Is anyone harbouring any emotional issues here? Steve, are you okay with this? Because it's kind of undermining your authority a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is, but yeah, I suppose probably the right way for the family to move forward, I guess.
So we go back to the two systems of the business and the family. How important is it for the family to start communicating about these very issues? And I want you to think about two policies that I think are pretty critical to the governance and the family succession planning. One, first of all, is what are the operations, just like any business, what are our operational plans for the next 12 months? How much working capital do we need? What are the risks that we're taking on by making these decisions? How much are we going to invest in new fencing? How much are we going to spend on maintenance? Surely they have to be written down, at least in some simple form, for the family to look at and say, we agree, with maybe a cash flow attached to it to show where the money's going to come from, who's going to control the money, and how it'll all flow out. It only goes to help Steve, doesn't it, in his job if he's been put into this position. So one is an operational plan is necessary. We can go on about a whole lot of other things. Two, and one of the most important ones in family governance and family succession, is how do families make investment decisions? Well, I can assure you 80% of the family businesses that I work with all across Asia, New Zealand and Australia is at the bottom line, they're usually emotional, but they're usually good decisions because families are entrepreneurial. And that's how they make money, because they're left as one individual or two individuals can run out and make a decision when they see an opportunity. But as the family gets bigger, as we move on to the generations and we have more branches of a family and more children, not everyone can be an entrepreneur. In fact, not everybody is an entrepreneur, are they? So you have to have a process. You have to start, what is it that we do to make investment decisions? When will we make them and how will we make them? And the family needs to almost sign off. So we learned here that Steve wants to buy the family farm, Georgie wants to buy the family farm, next door that is, Barney wanted to buy the family farm, but hey, we need to regather here and say, we've got changed circumstances. We potentially have 3 new family branches coming on. I think Steve's getting married soon, isn't he, Georgie? Yeah? So we have 3 family branches, we have children, so times have changed. We don't have an entrepreneur that can just run off and make a decision. So the 2 things that I want you to learn out of that are family governance and succession is around having a structure in place to communicate, to talk about the issues separate to the business. We need to get up in our helicopters and we need to review this as a family, make some decisions, and we need to write them down so the family are all on board. That's how we keep the harmony of the family, and that's how we make sure that the family effect on the business is positive and you are sustainable for generations to come. So if I go back to what I was talking about earlier, I'd like you all to think about, just in concluding, what is family succession? What is family succession? And I'll leave that up to you to answer. And if family succession is about communication, when do you start family succession? Is it here when children are 15? Is it here when they're at high school? Is it here when they're going to university? Is it here when they're married with children? Is it here when you sit in front of a lawyer? Or is it here when the first generation dies? I'll leave that one with you too, because I think the answer is quite obvious. It's been great talking to you all. I hope I've shared and imparted some knowledge to help you with thinking about succession planning. But I importantly want to thank these guys here who were thrust into doing this job, and they've had very little time, very little experience, and you've done very well to all of you. So thank you very much.